So we've got Martin Bryant will be acting as the moderator, and Martin is the now editor-at-large for The Next Web, one of the leading tech publications online. ANDREWTHOMSON from Boohoo.com, who is the relatively newly installed international director.
Yep.
That's right, yeah. Yep. Who's been with them since June and helping them obviously develop markets far afield, I assume. Yep. Yes, fantastic. And we've got Claire Braithwaite to the left, head of Tech North. Claire and I have been working together very much on this theme of Northern Tech and Powerhouse. So this should be near and dear to your heart. Hugh Campbell, who's one of the founding partners for GP Bullhound, one of the leading European technology investment banks, and also recently joined our advisory board for Tech North, which is awesome. Thank you. Tim Langley, the founder of Candy, one of Manchester's best-known tech startups, and also with us yesterday for the Northern Stars competition. So with that, Martin, shall I leave it to you?
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right.
Okay, good afternoon. So it feels like in the last few months everyone's started to really talk about the potential of tech in the north and northern startups, and it's been a kind of hype level that's risen maybe over the last couple of years, and you can really see it now with Tech North having started up and got into action recently. That it really feels like there's a movement happening, and yeah, on the panel today we've got a range of perspectives on that, yeah, so maybe if we start with you, Andrew. I think some people maybe don't realise or didn't realise that Boohoo, everyone must be aware of Boohoo if you've watched television in the last few years. There's an ad on every ad break.
Who is aware of Boohoo? I'll tell the marketing director, he'll be happy.
Boohoo.com. There you go. It sticks in your head, the ads. So yeah, but people might not be aware it's a Manchester company unless you happen to walk down Dale Street and see the flag outside. Yeah. Could you give us a bit of a story about around how Boohoo came together?
So Herb was right. I've only been at the company since June. So I'm not quite an expert yet, but the business started in 2006. So it was Mahmood Kamani and Carol Kane. They've been in the apparel industry for a long time, 20 plus years. So they were providing product to the high street, and they were looking at how online was developing, and they thought, you know what, we could do this. We've got the product, we understand the consumer, we understand fast fashion, the value proposition. So they started Boohoo in 2006. So it's always been based in Manchester. I mean, the Kamani family live in Manchester and have done for a very long time. So it really started out a merging of a couple of companies, and from that Boohoo was born. And since then it's just got an incredible journey. It's all about fast fashion, it's about a value proposition, and they've just really given the consumer what they're after. And along the way, you know, we think of Boohoo as we're a fashion brand. We're not even though we're this substantial pure player, we don't think of ourselves as a tech company. We see tech as just enabling our proposition to the consumer. So obviously started in the UK. From that we then moved into other territories. Initially that was sort of Ireland and Australia, markets which there was strong demand for the Boohoo product. We've then, last year, we launched in a number of countries in Europe. So, you know, the key markets such as France, Germany, but also Netherlands, Spain and Italy. We've got sites in Scandinavia, and then we've got the US as well. So we are starting to think of ourselves rather than a Manchester business and not just as a UK business, but as a global business. And we see our competitors on a global stage. So we now have offices in London, we've got an office in New York. We're looking to open offices in other parts of the world as well, because we need that local understanding and knowledge. And yeah, it's just a fantastic story.
Yeah, and why Manchester? Obviously, if the founders happen to be based here, then you understand why they might start there. But growing into an international business, why stay in Manchester?
Well, I guess the question is why not? What could be offered elsewhere that Manchester can't provide? I mean, if we look at Boohoo as a business, you know, first of all, it's about the fashion, it's about the product, and Manchester's fantastic. Manchester's got great heritage from a garment, apparel history, but it's got the universities, it's got the fashion talent, so we've got no problems there. We don't need to be in London to leverage that. And you know what? A lot of, you know, the majority of our product is also made and sourced in the UK, so that's great. So being based in Manchester certainly helps with that in terms of a lot of the manufacturing comes from the North and the Midlands as well. So there's no reasons to be outside of Manchester for that. And also Manchester is again developing at a pace in that particular area with the music scene and the development of Manchester. And then when it comes to the tech part as well, you know, certainly from the conversations I've had internally, there is a large tech presence in Manchester and the surrounding areas. So again, we don't feel the need to be located somewhere else outside of Manchester. It's the talents there, the scale of the tech, certainly in the north, is there. So, you know, why move? Why change a winning formula, essentially?
Brilliant. Okay, so Tim, you represent with Candy another company that has been around since before people really started to associate Manchester and the North with tech so much. And you actually took part in the very first accelerator in the UK, the Difference Engine, which I think was in Middlesbrough. Back in 2009. And if I look back, I actually think that's where this whole line to where we are really started in terms of startups in the North. Could you tell us a bit about your journey then?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, am I on?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, super. So Candy started in 2009, myself and Tom, who's here in the audience, working in a digital agency, kicking around some of the problems we were facing. In December 2009, we were at a Techcelerate event, which was very early days, was managers' events, pulling together investors and entrepreneurs and technologists, and heard John Bradford pitch about the Difference Engine. And then fortunately had a very tolerant wife who agreed to move to Middlesbrough for 6 months to take part in an accelerator programme. Obviously, so we came through that. ScreenReach or Screech, also very strong northern business, came through that. Moved Candy to Newcastle for a year, and then built a development team in Newcastle, and now have moved back to Manchester, and we've been in Manchester for 4.5 years now.
Just before we go on to, further, interesting about the Difference Engine as well is that the founder of one of Silicon Valley's hottest startups, Postmates, was actually on that programme as well. So Middlesbrough can claim some credit kind of for Postmates, which is quite an interesting one. But so just quickly, if you maybe tell us a bit about how you're doing now and why you're staying in Manchester.
Wow, how are we doing now? Really well. So we've been a little bit of a slower burning business, but we're going to rev about $750,000 this year. We're now a cash flow positive business, which is a great place to be. So we're not relying on investors anymore to be funding the business, and growing about 15% a month. So happy days.
Okay, so if we...
And why Manchester? Yeah. Sorry, so I guess I kind of answer or re-answer Andrew's questions. The universities, the tech scene, and it's not London, which is often a good thing.
Okay, so Claire, Tech North has started up over the last few months and is in gear now. How are you? How is Tech North doing?
How's Tech North doing?
Yeah.
So I've been in the role since May, and we had our official launch in September the 9th, in Leeds. And since then, we've rolled out our first programme, Northern Stars, which is, so, you know, Tech North purpose is firstly to start to shine a beacon on all the great stuff that's happening here. It's really important to emphasise this is not about replacing anything that's already happening, it's about adding to it and really highlighting the great stuff that's already happening. Because whilst we, you know, in Manchester, in the north, are aware or often aren't actually, but you know, you see the great tech ecosystems that are building. That's not visible outside of the north. So it's about highlighting that. It's also about supporting the development of relationship networks. So still, whilst the tech scene has developed and evolved enormously in the north over the last few years, it's still very fragmented, and that means that we're missing out opportunities to really scale and build what's happening here. So one of the first problems we're looking to overcome is how do we start to build those relationships, bring those relationship networks together. But also, you know, when I speak to investors, why are you not investing in northern tech businesses? they'll say, well, they're not visible. Are there actually any tech startups in the north? And so that visibility issue is one of the first areas we're looking at. So Northern Stars is really about mapping the tech startup space across the north and making it visible and showing and highlighting and championing these great businesses that are coming out. So we're looking to find our 10 hottest startups in the north. We've had 7 events so far across all the 7 cities that we work across. So we're working in Liverpool, Manchester, Leeds, Sheffield, Hull, Sunderland, Newcastle, which is no mean feat. We're a team of 10, do a lot of travelling. But yeah, so we've had 7 events already, and also done a number of other events. So we've already launched in partnership with the government and Tech City UK a new Tier 1 visa for exceptional talent that will be going live later on this month, where we'll be offering an advisory service for tech businesses in the north to if they're looking at bringing exceptional talent into the UK, and we'll also be able to endorse visas for exceptional talent as well. So yeah, we've done a lot in a fairly short space of time.
I think one of the interesting things that Tech North is doing is it wants to sell the North as a connected tech proposition, and I think that if you think back, traditionally there are rivalries between northern cities. How's that going? Are you finding people buying into that vision?
So 80% of inward investment into the UK in the tech and creative space goes into London. That's not, I think, because London is the best place for these businesses to be based. You know, whilst London offers great connectivity and relationship networks, and certainly from a fintech perspective has a lot to offer in terms of access to global markets, it's not the right place for an e-commerce business, for example. You know, we've got logistics here, you've got talent pool here, you've got a great ecosystem already. So you look at those stats and you think we are missing an opportunity here. And why are we missing that opportunity? It's because, you know, the UK has always sold itself internationally as the UK, and then you have each of the individual cities across the north doing their bit. But what we're doing is communicating a very fragmented message and offering, and by coming together and looking at the assets across the north as a whole, we have something globally compelling and competitive, and that's what I see really exciting about, you know, the Tech North conversation. And by looking at a wider ecosystem, is that suddenly we become big players on a global stage, and that's what we need to be doing. You know, we need to be thinking, you know, China is accelerating at a tremendous pace. We are competing with all these markets. Where is our economy going to be in 10, 20, 50 years' time? That's what this is about, you know. And you talk about competition between different and rivalry between cities. I think maybe on a political level, yes, but I don't see that in the tech community. Yeah. I see a lot of willingness to collaborate, and actually, you know, one of the things that we're looking to identify is really what is special and distinct about the North, so we can communicate it in a really clear way. And levels of collaboration are actually, you know, one thing that people cite. I mean, we were in a session yesterday where an entrepreneur was saying people want to work together and they're excited about solving problems together. You know, it's something that's really great about working in the North in tech.
Yeah, and Hugh, you were a Manchester grammar school boy who went away and formed a successful business in the technology sphere, and then came back to Manchester and brought that business to Manchester. Maybe for people who don't know what GP Bullhound is, if you could maybe tell us a bit about that and why you've brought it to Manchester.
Sure. So GP Bullhound is an investment bank. So we do 2 things. We help entrepreneurs raise money, typically not right at the startup stage, but once you've got something to shout about internationally. So helping companies raise £10 million and above, and ultimately helping entrepreneurs when the time comes to sell their business, whether it's to Google, to Facebook, to Microsoft, wherever you are in the technology value chain. So we're 55 people across what we think are the 6-10 cities in Europe to be based, which is London, where we started, Stockholm, which has a fantastic engineering base, Berlin, which has a really edgy scene, in Paris, in San Francisco, where we've been since 2006, and then of course in Manchester. And we came back to Manchester principally because in the UK we're building more billion-dollar tech companies than any country in Europe, and we're building them at a faster rate. And guess what? They're not all being built in London, and going forward less and less of them as a proportion of the total will be being built in London. So we've open an office in Manchester, not just to service the Manchester community and the technology companies there, but to work with all technology companies really based north of Stafford, and to help those entrepreneurs build the next unicorns.
Yeah, and you, as part of your activity here, you've bought the Northern Tech Awards, which I think
it's been fun actually.
Yeah, that's a really good event, because what I really like about the Northern Tech Awards is I discovered these companies I just didn't know. So there are these companies that are maybe working in quite niche fields, or are just big names that you kind of see on TV and you don't realise they're from the north. They're On the Beach, for example, was one that I only discovered was based near here from the Northern Tech Awards. What's the response been to those awards?
Well, it's been great. Again, I think one of the challenges that I saw when I moved back from London is that the community, because as Claire said, it's spread across these 7 cities or this huge region of 10, 12 million people, is so fragmented that it's very difficult to shine a light on these companies at an international level. So I just realised that these companies didn't seem to know each other. So people can only collaborate, going back to the previous discussion from Adrian, if they actually know each other. So this is an event which brings the 200 best CEOs of Northern Tech companies together with the sole objective of them literally just meeting each other. And On the Beach is a good example. So they've won bits and pieces of the awards over the last 3 years, and earlier this year they floated for £250 million, and it's a business based not 10 miles from this venue. So.
Something I have to address is, while we were talking about the North as a connected offering, Tim was furiously shaking his head, and is there something you'd like to, a counterpoint there?
Yes, so well, it was everything really in there. So I just everything in there. I love the idea of the North being not London, but actually. Is Manchester and I've got experience of Manchester and Newcastle. Are Manchester and Newcastle the same? Are they the North? I don't think so. I think there's strength, and this will be the interesting piece to see how Tech North can play into the strengths of the individual communities, whilst also representing it as a global, non-autonomous mass. And coming back to the idea about collaboration, the hardest piece, especially between cities, it's the just come back to transport again, but you don't bump into people over a water cooler to have a conversation about what they're doing when actually it takes 2 hours to get to Newcastle, and actually it's almost
takes a lot longer.
Yeah, well, it's almost the irony of having a Tech North Christmas party, and you know what? Let's just have it in London, which would be horrible. But actually, how do you pull everyone together? I don't know the answer to that question.
So which question do you want me to answer? So pulling people together?
How to bring people together? How to bring people and
I mean, you know, the topic of transport has been obviously pretty high on the whole Northern Powerhouse, and it was kind of, you know, in addition to devolution, it's where the focus has really been. Yeah, it's a pain in the arse travelling around on some of these trains. I mean, I get the chugger, I call it, from Delamere, which takes me, it's 2 hours door to door to go 30 miles from like middle of Cheshire. It takes me 3 hours door to door to an office at my office in London. You know, it's just ridiculous. But it's still absolutely possible. And you say, you know, how can people collaborate? Well, actually, when you get to know someone, you know, you have to meet someone a couple of times at a networking event, and then you've got that relationship. You can actually use something called technology to communicate with them. So, you know, and you're actually an example of someone who's been in, you know, both, you know, developed your business in Newcastle and brought it to Manchester. So, no, it's not the easiest, but I think it's about developing relevant and useful relationships. This isn't just about a kind of broad mass, or let's all kind of be in a soup together and have fun. You know, it's like, but where there are, so for example, for around Inward Investment, one of the things that we're doing is pulling together a proposition across the north. So we're looking at health tech, for example, to start with, because if we look at if each city is trying to sell its health tech capabilities separately to an international market, you know, the assets on their own are not compelling enough. But if we start to bring across the north as a whole, you've got R&D going on in the university in Newcastle, you've got health informatics in the Oxford, you know, Road corridor. And actually, as a business, well, if you're located in Leeds, you know, your talent pool, people can commute from Manchester, or you've got access to that talent pool. You can easily access these universities, 30 miles between the cities, So it's about strategic relationship. It's not just a broad brush, let's all be in one soup together. And in terms of, looking at the North as a whole as one homogenous mass, we're never going to be homogenous. We're not homogenous. That's what's great about us. But there are, commonalities across the North in terms of, we're generally, as a people even, we're quite pragmatic. We don't like BS. There's stuff that we have got stuff in common, and we've got stuff that makes us different, and that's what's great. But I go back to this international conversation, because this is what I think is really important for us is, someone in San Francisco, Hong Kong, Singapore doesn't really give a S about the difference between maybe Liverpool and Manchester. But if we can come together and have a conversation and sell ourselves, as united, I don't think that diminishes who we are as individual cities at all. In fact, the stronger that our culture is individually, the better. One of the things, Manchester's just been voted by Lonely Planet as one of the top 10 cities to visit globally next year. Why? Because it's got guts and culture, and there is something here that's real. So we're not trying to diminish that at all. We should highlight that, but you can still have. We can be together and unique as well.
Can I ask a question? How you actually go through selling, I guess, the North in that regard? Because I've just recently moved up from London, having never worked in the North before, and thinking back to my sort of previous last sort of 5 years working in that e-com side, I've been dealing with companies in sort of Tel Aviv. I've been out to Berlin to meet those companies, working with companies in the US, but I'm almost embarrassed to say I've never had a conversation with a sort of a northern-based sort of tech startup. And how do you go about building that profile, so even people, Luddites like me, who used to work in London but now work in beautiful Manchester, are aware of what's going on? Because I think that's a key challenge, because I'm like a consumer of these types of organisations, and I'm ignorant to the fact, partly because I'm quite new to the scene, but I still
how do you build
be aware.
How you build awareness of it. I mean, there's multiple ways that we need to be doing that, and obviously Tech North will be doing a certain amount around promotion and PR and programs that we do, but also it's about inspiring a wider conversation, because we can't do this on our own. We're not going to be able to. Northern Stars is one of the ways. It's just a way of starting to say, look, here are some companies, and start to profile and provide case studies, and the profile that we'll raise through doing that work will come from that. But it's also about building kind of strategic relationships between different hubs, so that we can as Tech North be a body that people can approach and say, I'm interested in talking to an SME that's focused in X, maybe in the North. Can you introduce us? We can do that. I'm going over to Estonia in 2 weeks, and we're going to be signing a tech link partnership there. So there's starting to build, links around the world. So as an organisation, we can help to be something that's visible in the ecosystem that can then help with those introductions. But there's also a cultural thing, and again, Martin's spoken about it as well, that as a northern business, we don't really shout about what we do. We're quite like, just get your head down and get on with it, and it's like that's just how we are. Quite pragmatic. It's not comfortable to be promoting ourselves, but I think we do need to try and recognise that we're losing out possibly on visibility and the opportunity to attract talent. I mean, Adrian brought up a great point before. Attracting talent here and building out our talent pool is absolutely crucial in terms of can we really achieve the ambitions and visions that for the North. And if we don't shout about what we've got here, no one thinks there is anything here, so no one will move here.
Speaking about shouting, I would love to get a quick question from the audience if anyone has a point they'd like to bring up. A hand has gone up there. Yes, don't know if we've got a microphone, so maybe you have to shout.
Voice, is all right. I'd just like to ask the panel what they think success will look like in a decade if all this goes well.
So that was a question. What will success look like in a decade for the North if all of what we've been talking about here goes well? Hugh, maybe.
So we've created the Northern Tech Map, which has about 2,000 companies on it today. So one measure of success is, can we build a community of companies in the region? So maybe that number should be 5 to 10,000, maybe it should be 10,000 companies in 10 years' time. But it's not just about company creation, it's about the creation of value and shareholder value from where I'm sitting. And so it's about creating not just more unicorns, more billion-dollar companies. So we have 7 in the region today. Maybe that number should be 20, so we should strive to create more billion-dollar companies. But we should also strive really hard, and I think this is where the hard work comes in, is to get the companies that are worth perhaps £50 million in technology and help them through collaborating to build towards that £500 million to £1 billion level. And once you get companies that are worth that much, of course, the spin-off benefits are massive for individuals. They become wealthier. They decide to bring up their families locally. And over a 10-year view, you can build a community which is much, much stronger and bleeds less to London and bleeds less to Silicon Valley.
Okay, we're pretty much out of time here, so we're going to have to wrap up there. But just like to thank the panel and look forward to a very interesting future for Northern Tech.